My name is Tone Vays. I have had a YouTube channel trying to explain not only Bitcoin, crypto, but also trading, investing, because I do come from the traditional Wall Street side. I have a master's in financial engineering, so I do understand technology. Used to code, was never very good at it, so that's why I never kept up with the coding side of it. But trading and finance side was more of my specialty than coding. You can find me on YouTube, all social media. I organize events. This one down here. Oh, let me see. The one on the bottom there, that's we teach people how to use Bitcoin technology. Unconfiscatable is just a Bitcoin-only event, and the Financial Summit is an event for traders, hedge funds, VCs, investors. That one is more financially focused across all topics, not only Bitcoin. Okay, I think I have 15 minutes. It is 12:30, so I will try to do this quickly because a lot of these topics have already been mentioned. So how do I look at decentralization? What is decentralization? We've never really had it. The best example of decentralization before Bitcoin was BitTorrent. When you would download a file where there were pieces of that file in on multiple people's servers, and they would connect them all through some kind of a central interface, like BitTorrent, but it would download pieces of these files from other people's computers, okay? This was the solution to like LimeWire, and Napster started it all, but those were centralized websites that the government was able to take down, but BitTorrent is still very, very difficult to take down. And the end result of that was that companies decided to make it cheaper and easier for people to get digital files. Same thing with MP3s, and now most people use Spotify and other means to get their music instead of constantly downloading it, plus the risk of viruses as well. So the next level of decentralization came with Bitcoin. And this is how I see decentralization. It's a three-sided triangle. And I'm not going to say which one is more important than the other. They're all equally important. And each one should also be decentralized within each part of the triangle. But even if one of the parts of the triangle gets fully centralized, it does not make the entire triangle centralized. You still have 2/3 of the triangle that will completely stop a single third of a triangle to overtake the system. In fact, some of these single third of a triangle could prevent collusion between the other two. So if the coding and the mining becomes fully controlled by a single entity, the nodes can still prevent centralization in the system, okay? And if you are looking at a project with claims of decentralization, you want to look at it through this lens. How decentralized is it based on this triangle? So we're going to start with the code because that was the first thing that was released by Satoshi to create Bitcoin, which is our best example in the world right now of decentralization. And we're going to dive into the Bitcoin code. Now, all this data is publicly available, but no one is really incentivized to put this data in a graphical form, which is why this is from 2016 and this is from 2019 or 2020 because no one is really writing these articles, even though the data is publicly available on GitHub. I can probably do it myself, but I'm hoping that somebody else would put this in a graphical interface. So back in 2016, we had someone like Peter Willa, who wrote the majority of the Bitcoin code. And like the next set were Vladimir Vanderland and Gregory Maxwell. By 2019, this had completely changed. I'm trying to find the year here. Yeah, that's this is 2019, and that's halfway to 2019. So you can see which developers and how many developers are coding your project. So if you are building a project, let's say on Solana, or you're launching a project on another blockchain, who is coding that blockchain? Do you know? Do you know who the developers are? Do you know that, is it a single developer? Is it 1,000 developers, like in the case of Ethereum? how important is the 1,000th developer? And a lot of projects say, we have the greatest developer that ever existed. He coded all of NASA's satellites. There's no one better than this guy. Every project thinks they have the greatest developer that has ever lived. And if you show that code to any other developer, they're just going to laugh and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like how many of you have dealt with this in your when you're hiring, developers, right? So, I'm not going to say that Bitcoin has the single greatest developer that ever existed. And I'm not going to say that Bitcoin code has the greatest number of developers. Ethereum probably has way more. But the question that you have to ask is, what is the quantity times the quality of those developers, okay? So when Bitcoin was forking in 2017, well, when Bitcoin Cash forked off of Bitcoin, this is the list of developers that were coding Bitcoin Core, and this is the list of developers coding Bitcoin Unlimited, which became Bitcoin Cash. And Bitcoin Errorlog is not even a developer. He's actually a Bitcoiner, but he found a spelling mistake in the code, and he demanded that he was put on the list of coders of the Bitcoin Unlimited code. And yeah, a few of these guys are probably pretty good programmers, but the majority of these guys are better programmers, and there's way more of them. So there's more eyes looking at the code. More critical bugs could be found. So this is one of the three triangles. Now, the reason why Bitcoin makes changes so slow, it's like, oh, it's like a dinosaur, it's so slow to adopt, is because it's trying to revolutionize everything at once, right? So, for example, let me see if this works. Perfect. Right here, we have the liquid sidechain, okay? The liquid sidechain right there in the corner, that is an Ethereum competitor, okay? So the liquid is a sidechain of Bitcoin. You move your Bitcoin into the liquid sidechain. It's a one-to-one peg. You get your liquid Bitcoin, and you can use that as the equivalent to gas in the Ethereum network to power your smart contracts. So you can put smart contracts on top of Bitcoin through second-layer solutions. Not a lot of people are using it because there isn't that much to gain from the underlying product, for example. Then you have something like Lightning. I have to find Lightning on this thing. Rootstock is another example to Liquid. There's also others. There's actually a pretty old element. Somewhere down there was Lightning. Scala Performance Layer 2. Can't find it. But Lightning is basically the micropayment of Bitcoin, and it's also on here as well. So I know the guy who created this was going to make it interactive, so you can see the progress in each of these. But this is one of the reasons why Bitcoin is so slow to adapt, and it can't screw up, right? The reason why most of you are building your NFTs or other stuff on blockchain agnostic is because you don't know if the blockchain you're building on top of will be around in 10 years. So you have to build it blockchain agnostic. Oh, we're agnostic. We don't have to choose one. We can always migrate over. Well, right, because you don't want to take the risk of one of these platforms. I just saw this morning, Gavin Wood has decided to leave his project, Polkadot, to the community and go and start another project. This is what Dan Larimer usually does, and every time he leaves his blockchain project, that project tends to kind of die. Like, how many of you use EOS? That was going to be like the greatest platform ever for smart contract. One, two heads. You still use it? Okay, right? So again, right, once the founder of your blockchain decides to leave it to the community, the way Satoshi left it to the community, I'm like Satoshi. I will leave this blockchain to the community and make it more decentralized. In reality, that's when everyone kind of says, oh, well, boy, who's going to program it now? Who's going to be in charge? And that's when these projects tend to stop being used completely. So again, you want to be fully aware of who the developers are in the blockchain that you are building on top of. Because once they walk away, it's not their fault. Like, I left it to the community, and the community screwed it up because it was decentralized. These are the kinds of problems that have the lowest risk in Bitcoin, because the Bitcoin blockchain is not going anywhere, Okay, so you avoid that kind of risk by doing that. Okay, part two, mining. Mining is absolutely critical. This is the burning of electricity for proof of work. This is 1/3 of the decentralized triangle. This is what allowed you to send data to another person and lose possession of that data, because mining and the burning of electricity builds more security on top of every single transaction. And in order to go backwards and alter the history of that transaction, you need to redo all of the work. You have to put all of that investment. You have to burn all the electricity and use the same amount of electricity as has already been built after your transaction. And you have to do all of that faster than the next single block. This is what creates immutable records and immutable transactions. Bitcoin has it, and I question the claims of any other blockchain that says our historical record is immutable. I understand what makes it immutable. The mining makes my Bitcoin transaction historically immutable, and the data connected to that transaction historically immutable. I question claims of projects that don't have mining, because that's what makes it immutable, basically. Now, just because your data is immutable doesn't mean it's true. Okay, so keep in mind, putting voting on the blockchain doesn't make it true, right? You put a lie into the blockchain, it'll just be there immutably, right? It's like my real estate's on a blockchain. I'm like, yes, but if the government official decides to put into the blockchain that his cousin now owns your real estate, that is also an immutable record in the blockchain. Like, it doesn't make it true, it just makes it immutable. And I understand the mechanism that does it in Bitcoin. You have mining pools where most people mine through, though not everyone mines in a pool. You can mine individually. The original software for the mining pools was released by Slush Pool. It was called Stratum version 1. In Stratum version 2, each miner inside the pool will get to decide which Bitcoin transactions get mined. That creates more decentralization in mining, which means it doesn't even matter which pool you're mining on. Even if the pool starts to take the majority of the network, if each miner in the pool can choose their own transactions, then again, the mining part itself becomes more and more decentralized. We can compare Bitcoin mining to the mining of other proof of work coins. This is obviously an old slide because Ethereum is no longer mineable. But every other mining, Dogecoin doesn't even have mining. It lost its mining about 5 years ago, and it's now being merged mined with Litecoin. The problem with a lot of these other mineable coins is that once the token price goes to a low enough point, its mining starts to implode. There's no incentive to mine. That's what happened with Dogecoin. Dogecoin fell to such a low point, its mining structure collapsed. So the developers, again, centralized system, the developers altered the code so that when you mine Litecoin, here, you mine Litecoin, you earn Doge. But what happens when the price of Litecoin goes low enough? Then the Litecoin mining will implode, and then Litecoin would be merged mined with something else. Eventually, all mining will fall back on Bitcoin. You're mining Bitcoin, you can earn another token. Several tokens have been doing that, like Emmercoin, for example. They've been merged mining, piggybacking off Bitcoin forever, but I don't know if anyone uses that chain. Again, this is an old slide. Vitalik basically saying we're going to get rid of mining, and he did it. I was surprised. I really thought that the miners of Ethereum would fork off and try to convince the projects to stay on the mining side of the chain. It would actually be a more decentralized version. If you eliminate Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation, and it would be a decentralized Ethereum. But I don't think a lot of people need decentralized Ethereum. They like the fact that the Ethereum Foundation and Vitalik can, fix things if things go horribly wrong, like they did in 2016 with the DAO hack. Okay, so that's mining. Again, 1/3 of a triangle. And finally, we have nodes. If I had to make one a little bit more important than the other, I would say it's the nodes. Because I am not a good enough developer to contribute to the code. I am not going to run a mining farm. I've ran like 2 miners just to understand how it works. It was a challenge to set up your first miner. Nodes is something anybody can do. It has it has a little bit of a very low cost barrier to entry. All you have to do is buy a Raspberry Pi or use an old laptop, and it will take you a few days to read about how to run a node. But it's almost free to run a node. And this is a graphic. Let me see the year here. This is 2020. This is September 7th, 2022. And the number of Bitcoin nodes was going down at some point, but you can see from this graphic, I got to back up because I'm too close. Let me see if I can do this. So the number of total nodes was 10,000, and now it's 14,000. So the number of nodes went up. That's good. That's more decentralization. You can look at the map. US is still dominating along with Europe and a little bit in Asia as well. You can see how China has fallen off the list because China banned mining, so they lost a lot of nodes. And nodes are absolutely critical. Nodes allow you to validate your own transaction. Oh, sorry. Also, one important point. NA. We don't know where these nodes are. 51% of nodes, we don't know where they are. That's a good thing. That means people aren't broadcasting what country they're in. That adds to decentralization. It used to be only 25% unknown. Now we have 51% unknown. That's good. That creates more censorship resistance. And this also means your node is probably running over the Tor browser, which again is a decentralized internet browser. Things are getting much better. Back in 2019, we had less than a quarter of up-to-date nodes. 2020, it got worse, but look at 2022. People are starting to be more conscious, and people are keeping their nodes up to date, and that secures the entire system. Oh, let me just, I forgot that I had these zoomed in. And I got like 2 minutes to go to finish up on the nodes. And you can see how Bitcoin nodes are completely dominating across other Bitcoin-style competitors like Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Knots is new. I don't know that much about it, but it is still a Bitcoin node. Bitcoin Knots is still part of the Bitcoin system. Bitcoin developers still always argue over what the future additions are. But what brings Bitcoin value is its stability. The fact that you can't just alter the code. You're not just going to move fast and break things. And this, to me, is the most stable blockchain. We can skip these. That, to me, is the most stable blockchain to build on top of. It's not going to be easy, but if you are building an NFT, if you are building your project that has an underlying dependency on another project, whether you're building it on top of, whether you're pinging into, what do you call it, OpenSea for your NFTs, if you're pinging into Ethereum, if you're building on top of Solana, you really want to also consider how can you build it on top of Bitcoin? Because if you want your project to last a decade from now, and you don't want to migrate it over and hopping it from blockchain to blockchain to blockchain, you want to start looking into the one that has a highest probability of still being there in a decade, and to me, that's Bitcoin. All right, thank you. If there's time for questions, I'm happy to take some.